I'm Dr. Anna Sanders, and 3 months ago I thought my life was perfectly mapped out like one of my botanical charts. Now I'm staring at a dusty classroom in rural Texas, wondering how the hell I ended up here instead of my pristine university lab. The moving truck disappeared into the Dallas heat, leaving me with boxes of research equipment that suddenly seemed ridiculous. Microscopes and specimen containers in a place where the nearest decent lab was 200 miles away. My golden hair stuck to my neck despite the early morning hour, and I could already feel sweat forming between my shoulder blades. "You the plant lady?" A small voice interrupted my self-pity. I turned to find a girl maybe 8 years old, dirt smudged across her cheek, staring at me with curious brown eyes. "I'm Anna. You must be one of my students." "Maria. My mama says you're here to teach us about flowers and stuff." "Plants," I corrected automatically. "Much more than just flowers." She shrugged. "Same thing." The makeshift classroom revealed itself as even more challenging than I'd imagined. Folding tables served as desks, a cracked whiteboard dominated one wall, and the air conditioning unit wheezed like it was dying. 12 children ranging from 6 to 14 filed in, their faces displaying everything from curiosity to outright skepticism. "Good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Sanders, but you can call me Miss Anna." I tried to project confidence, while internally questioning every decision that led me here. "How many of you have seen the ocean?" Blank stares answered me. "A lake?" 3 hands rose tentatively. "Right. Rural Texas." These kids probably knew more about drought than marine ecosystems. "Well," I continued, pulling out my laptop, "today we're going to explore how plants survive in places you've never imagined." The slideshow revealed underwater kelp forests, and suddenly I had their attention. "Plants grow underwater?" Maria asked incredulously. "Everywhere. Desert, mountains, ocean floor. They're the most adaptable organisms on Earth." As the day progressed, something shifted. These children possessed a hunger for knowledge that my university students had long ago lost to grade obsession and career anxiety. When I explained how desert cacti store water, they connected it to their grandparents' drought stories. When I showed them carnivorous plants, they shrieked with delight. But it was during the evening preparation in my rented cabin that the real work began. I spread my research across the kitchen table. Specimens collected from 3 continents, detailed notes about plant adaptation mechanisms, and my personal journal where I'd been documenting this bizarre sabbatical. The journal entry from tonight read, "Day 1 complete. These kids see magic where I see science. Maybe that's what I've been missing." My phone buzzed with a text from my research partner back at the university. "Tenure committee asking about your return date. Don't screw this up, Anna." I stared at the message, then at the enthusiasm worksheets my students had filled out. For the first time in months, I felt something other than the hollow ache that had driven me here in the first place. Outside, thunder rumbled in the distance, promising one of those dramatic Texas storms. I closed my laptop and opened a bottle of wine, settling onto the porch to watch lightning flicker across the vast sky. Tomorrow, I'd have to figure out how to teach ocean ecosystems to children who'd never seen waves. But tonight, for the first time since my world imploded, I felt like maybe I was exactly where I needed to be. The storm was moving closer. The storm hit harder than expected. Rain hammered my cabin roof like bullets while I reviewed tomorrow's lesson plans, trying to figure out how to explain marine food chains to kids who thought fish came from the grocery store. Then came the knock. I opened the door to find a woman drenched to the bone, her brunette, hair plastered against her face, brown eyes flashing with frustration. She wore a leather jacket that had seen better days and boots that suggested she wasn't from around here. "My bike died about a mile up the road," she said without preamble. "Mind if I use your phone? Come in before you catch pneumonia." I stepped aside, grabbing a towel from the linen closet. "I'm Anna." "Brooke." She accepted the towel gratefully, revealing sharp cheekbones and a no-nonsense attitude that intrigued me. "Thanks. This isn't exactly how I planned to spend my evening." While she called for roadside assistance, I made coffee. The phone conversation revealed fragments of her situation, something about equipment, failure, urgent data collection, and a marine research deadline that couldn't wait. "Marine research?" I asked when she hung up. "Out here?" "Gulf Restoration Project. We're tracking pollution sources affecting coastal breeding grounds." She wrapped her hands around the coffee mug, and I noticed calloused fingers and a small scar across her knuckles. My motorcycle decided tonight was perfect for a breakdown. What kind of pollution? Her eyes lit up. Agricultural runoff mainly. Fertilizers create dead zones where nothing survives. We're trying to map the watershed connections. Something clicked. You're documenting how land use affects marine ecosystems. Exactly. She studied me with new interest. Most people glaze over when I mention dead zones. I'm a botanist. Well, was. Currently teaching kids about plant adaptation. Here. Why would a botanist end up in the middle of nowhere, Texas? The question hit too close to home. Sometimes you need distance to gain perspective. She nodded like she understood running from something. The tow truck wouldn't arrive until morning, so I offered my couch. We talked until past midnight, her passion for marine conservation infectious. She'd traveled from Belize to Alaska, documenting how human activity destroyed underwater habitats most people never saw. The kids tomorrow would love your photos, I said, studying images on her laptop of coral reefs and underwater forests. Kids? My students. I'm part of a rural teaching program. Harder to explain ocean ecosystems when they've never seen one. She leaned forward. I could stop by before I leave. Show them what's really at stake. The next morning brought chaos. 12 excited children crowded around Brooke as she connected her laptop to my projector. The underwater photographs silenced even the rowdiest boys. This is what lives beneath the waves, Brooke said, clicking through images of sea turtles and dolphin pods. But here's what happens when pollution reaches their home. The contrast was devastating. Healthy reefs gave way to barren seafloors, vibrant fish communities replaced by empty water. Where are all the fishies? Asked Maria, her voice small. Gone, Brooke said gently. When plants on land get too much fertilizer, it washes into the ocean and kills everything there. I watched her explain complex ecological connections in terms these children could grasp, her brown eyes warm with genuine care. She answered every question with patience I rarely saw in academic settings. Miss Anna's plants are connected to my ocean, she told them. Everything's connected. During lunch break, Brooke helped me organize specimens while the children played outside. You're good with them, I said. They remind me why this work matters. She held up a pressed flower from my collection. Most adults have forgotten how to see wonder. Our hands brushed as I took the specimen back, and something electric passed between us. She felt it too. I saw it in the way her breath caught, the slight flush across her cheekbones. I should get going, she said quietly. Tow truck's here. But she didn't move away. Neither did I. The children's laughter drifted through the window as we stood there, close, enough that I could smell her shampoo mixed with leather and rain. For a moment, the carefully constructed walls around my heart cracked, just slightly. Maybe you could come back, I said. The kids would love more ocean stories. Maybe I could. Her motorcycle roared to life outside, but something had shifted in those few seconds of almost contact. As she drove away, I realized I was already planning lessons that would require her expertise. That evening, I found myself checking my phone more often than usual, hoping for a text that didn't come. Brooke returned 3 days later with a proposal that made my heart skip. She stood in my classroom doorway holding a cooler and wearing that same leather jacket, but this time her smile held mischief. I brought the ocean to them, she announced, setting the cooler on my desk. Inside, saltwater specimens floated in clear containers, kelp fronds, seagrass, even a small piece of living coral. The children gathered around like she was performing magic. This is how underwater plants survive, she explained, lifting a strand of kelp. They don't need soil like Miss Anna's land plants. Maria raised her hand. But how do they get food? I stepped closer, our shoulders almost touching as we both reached for the kelp sample. They absorb nutrients directly from water, I said, acutely aware of Brooke's proximity, like drinking through their skin. Exactly. Brooke's fingers brushed mine as we demonstrated the plant's flexibility. The brief contact sent warmth shooting up my arm. Land plants and ocean plants solved the same problems differently. We spent the afternoon connecting terrestrial and marine ecosystems, our teaching styles complementing each other perfectly. She had the storytelling gift that made science come alive, while I provided the technical foundation that gave their wonder structure. "You two should write a book together," said Tommy, our most precocious student. We both laughed, but I caught Brooke glancing at me with something unreadable in her brown eyes. After the children left, we lingered in the empty classroom, neither wanting to break the spell of successful collaboration. "That was incredible," I said, packing specimens back into the cooler. "They understood concepts that give my university students trouble. We make a good team." Brooke leaned against my desk, watching me work. I've never had teaching feel that effortless. The late afternoon sun slanted through dusty windows, turning her hair to burnished copper. I found myself staring longer than appropriate. "Want to grab dinner?" she asked. "I know a place in town that makes decent barbecue." We drove separately to Hankey's Bar, a roadhouse that had seen better decades. Over pulled pork and local beer, our conversation wandered from professional to personal territory. "Why marine conservation?" I asked. "Most people pick easier fights. My grandmother lived on the Gulf Coast. When I was little, she'd take me shrimping at dawn." Brooke's expression grew distant. By the time I graduated college, her favorite spots were dead zones. Nothing survived there anymore. "So you decided to fight back. Someone has to." She met my eyes across the scarred wooden table. "What about plants? Why botany?" The question I'd been avoiding for months. I thought I loved research. Turns out I just loved the idea of being brilliant and important. "That's not why you're here, though." Sharp girl. "No. I'm here because my research partner and I took a long drink of beer. Let's say mixing professional and personal relationships was a mistake." "Ah." Understanding flickered in her expression. The classic academic disaster. She got the grant money, the lab space, and somehow convinced our department that my 3 years of work was actually hers. Damn, that's brutal. The worst part? I saw it coming and did nothing. Too afraid of conflict, too desperate to keep the peace. The admission tasted bitter, so I ran. Took this teaching sabbatical and tried to convince myself it was noble. Brooke reached across the table, her fingers covering mine. Maybe it was. Noble, I mean. The contact was deliberate this time, not accidental. Her thumb traced small circles on my knuckles, and I felt something deep in my chest loosen for the first time in months. "You don't know me well enough to make that judgment. I know you care about those kids. I know you light up when you explain plant adaptation. I know you make terrible coffee, but your eyes are the most incredible green I've ever seen." My breath caught. We were crossing lines here, moving from professional admiration into dangerous territory. "Brooke." "I know." She pulled her hand back, but slowly. "I know this is complicated." We drove back to my cabin in separate vehicles, but she followed me inside without invitation. The small space felt charged with possibility and restraint in equal measure. "I should go," she said, not moving from my kitchen doorway. "Probably." Instead, we opened another bottle of wine and sat on my couch, maintaining careful distance while sharing stories about our worst field research disasters. The conversation grew easier with each glass, her laughter infectious and warm. When she reached for the wine bottle on my coffee table, our faces ended up inches apart. I could see gold flecks in her brown eyes, count the freckles across her nose. "Anna." My name was barely a whisper. The moment stretched between us, full of possibility and fear. Then she pulled back abruptly, running her hands through her hair. "I should really go. Early meeting tomorrow." But she didn't move. Neither did I. Something fundamental had shifted tonight, some line crossed that we couldn't uncross. As she finally gathered her jacket and headed for the door, we both knew this wasn't ending here. "Will you come back tomorrow?" I asked. "The kids want to hear about shark migration patterns." Her smile was soft and knowing. "Try to keep me away." 3 weeks into our unofficial teaching partnership, Brooke suggested a field trip that would change everything between us. "There's a creek about 10 miles east," she said, spreading a map across my kitchen table. "Spring-fed, connects to the watershed that feeds into the Gulf. Perfect for demonstrating plant-ocean connections." I studied the route, trying to ignore how her hair smelled like rain, and something uniquely her. The children have never seen running water that wasn't from a tap. Even better, real discovery. The next morning we loaded 12 excited kids into the school van, Brooke following on her motorcycle. The creek revealed itself as a hidden gem, Clear water flowing over limestone, rocks, surrounded by native Texas plants I'd only seen in field guides. See how these cattails grow right at the water's edge? I knelt beside the stream, Maria crouched next to me. They're filtering the water, keeping it clean. Like a giant Brita filter, said Tommy, making everyone laugh. Brooke waded deeper, her boots waterproof and practical. This clean water travels hundreds of miles before reaching my ocean. Every plant Anna's showing you helps protect marine life you'll never see. She cupped water in her hands, letting it trickle through her fingers. In the Gulf, seagrass beds work just like these cattails. They filter pollution and provide shelter for baby fish. The children spread along the creek bank, suddenly seeing connections everywhere. I watched Brooke explain how underwater plants survived different challenges, while I identified terrestrial species that required similar adaptations. Our teaching styles had found perfect rhythm. Miss Anna, Miss Brooke, called Sarah, our quietest student. Why don't you two have husbands? The question hit like cold water. 12 pairs of eyes stared at us expectantly, innocent curiosity demanding honest answers. Well, I started carefully. Some people find happiness in different ways. I travel too much for marriage, Brooke added diplomatically. Hard to maintain relationships when you're always chasing research. My mama says ladies who don't marry must be lonely, Maria observed. Brooke and I exchanged glances across the creek. Something vulnerable flickered in her expression. Sometimes being alone is better than being with the wrong person, I said finally. How do you know if they're wrong? Asked Tommy. When they don't see the real you, Brooke answered quietly, her eyes on mine. When they want you to be someone else. The conversation drifted to other topics, but the moment lingered between us. As afternoon shadows lengthened, we gathered the children for return journey, both of us quieter than usual. That evening, Brooke joined me for what had become our ritual sunset walk along the dirt road behind my cabin. The Texas sky painted itself in impossible shades of orange and pink. Those questions today, she said, keeping pace beside me. Kids don't filter thoughts like adults. They were just curious. Were they wrong, though, about the lonely part? I stopped walking. Brooke? I've been thinking about this for weeks, Anna. This thing between us. My heart hammered against my ribs. What thing? She turned to face me fully, brown eyes serious. Don't pretend you don't feel it. The way we orbit each other. The way you watch me when you think I'm not looking. Heat flooded my cheeks. You're imagining things. Am I? She stepped closer. Because I've been imagining what it would be like to kiss you since that first night in the storm. The admission hung between us in the cooling air. Somewhere in the distance, a mockingbird ran through its repertoire of borrowed songs. This is complicated, I whispered. Why? Because we're both women? Because we work together? Because you're scared? All of the above. She reached up, fingers barely grazing my cheek. I'm scared too. But I'm tired of pretending I don't want this. The space between us disappeared. Her lips were soft and warm, tasting like the coffee we'd shared after lunch. The kiss started gentle, questioning, then deepened when I didn't pull away. My hands found her jacket, pulling her closer as 3 weeks of tension finally found release. She kissed like she did everything else, with complete focus and surprising tenderness. When we broke apart, breathless, the first stars were appearing in the darkening sky. Damn, she whispered against my forehead. Yeah. We walked back to my cabin in charged silence, hands brushing but not quite holding. On my porch, she turned to face me again. I don't want to rush this, she said. But I also don't want to pretend it didn't happen. Neither do I. She kissed me again, slower this time, her hands framing my face like I was precious. When she pulled back, her smile was soft and wondering. I should go. Let you process this. Stay for coffee, real coffee. Her laugh was low and warm. Your coffee's terrible, remember? Then stay anyway. Inside my small kitchen, making coffee became an excuse to stay close. To brush past each other with deliberate casualness. When she reached around me for mugs, her body pressed against my back briefly, sending electricity down my spine. Anna. My name was barely a breath. I turned in her arms, seeing my own desire reflected in her eyes. This time when we kissed, we didn't hold back. Later, much later, we sat on my couch sharing a blanket, her head on my shoulder while I processed what had just changed between us. "No regrets?" she asked quietly. I pressed my lips to her hair. "Ask me tomorrow." But I already knew the answer would be the same. The first sign of trouble came through an email at 6 in the morning. "Dr. Sanders," the message began, "I trust you remember our previous collaboration. I've seen your recent media attention and think we should discuss your current activities." My blood ran cold. Dr. Rebecca Martinez, my former research partner, the woman who'd destroyed my career and stolen my work. But what media attention? I found out 20 minutes later when Maria's older brother showed me his phone. A wildlife conservation blog had featured Brooke's latest Gulf restoration video. And there, I was in the background, laughing as she demonstrated water filtration to our students. The caption read, "Marine biologist Brooke Davis partners with local educator in innovative cross-disciplinary teaching." "Miss Anna, you're famous," Maria squealed, but my stomach was already sinking. By noon, the story had metastasized. A tabloid journalist had connected dots I hadn't realized existed, discovering my academic background and my connection to Brooke. The headline made me sick. "Fallen University researcher finds new purpose with radical environmental activist." The article painted our teaching partnership as calculated propaganda, suggesting I was using innocent children to promote Brooke's extreme conservation agenda. Worse, it hinted at our personal relationship with vulgar speculation about alternative lifestyles influencing young minds. "This is garbage," Brooke said, reading over my shoulder in the empty classroom. "Pure sensationalist trash? It doesn't matter. My university will see it." As if summoned by my fear, my phone rang. Department head. "Anna, I'm looking at some disturbing reports about your sabbatical activities." "Dr. Peterson, I can explain." "Can you explain why you're associating with environmental extremists? Why you're using your position to promote political agendas?" "We're teaching science, basic ecology concepts." "The optics are terrible, Anna. The university can't be associated with this kind of controversy." The call ended with an ultimatum: return immediately and distance myself from the situation, or face formal review of my position. That afternoon brought worse news. The conservative donors funding our rural teaching program had seen the coverage. The program director called with barely contained panic. "There are questions about your methods, Anna, about the appropriateness of your guest speakers. Brooke Davis is a respected marine biologist. Her credentials are impeccable. That's not the point. Parents are calling. They're concerned about what messages their children are receiving." The absurdity hit me like a physical blow. We'd taught photosynthesis and food webs. Basic science. But somehow that had become controversial because two women were teaching it together. By evening, Brooke was furious. She paced my living room like a caged wolf, her phone buzzing with calls from her own organization. "They want me to issue a statement," she said. "Clarify that our relationship is purely professional." "Maybe you should." She stopped pacing. "Is that what you want? To pretend this means nothing?" The question hung between us like a loaded gun. I thought about Dr. Peterson's ultimatum, about the teaching program that might end because of our association. I don't know what I want anymore. That's not good enough, Anna. Not after what happened between us. What happened was complicated. Maybe we moved too fast. Her face went carefully blank. "I see. Brooke, that's not what I meant." "Actually, it's exactly what you meant." She grabbed her jacket from my chair. "You're doing what you always do, running when things get difficult." "That's not fair, isn't it? Your research partner screws you over, so you run here. We get media attention, so you want to run back to your university. When do you stop running, Anna?" The words hit their target because they were true. I had been running, from Rebecca's betrayal, from my own failures, from the intensity of what I felt for Brooke. "I'm trying to protect my career. By sacrificing everything that matters?" She paused at my door. "Those kids adore you. They're learning more than they ever have, and you're going to abandon them because some small-minded people can't handle progress. It's not that simple. It never is with you." She left without slamming the door, which somehow made it worse. I spent that night staring at my laptop screen, cursor blinking in an empty email draft. How do you explain to children that their favorite lessons are ending because adults are afraid of two women teaching together? My phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. Saw the news. Call me. We can work something out. The implication was clear. Return to her orbit, to her control, and this mess disappears. Keep my research position, my academic reputation, my carefully constructed professional life. All I had to do was pretend the last month never happened. Pretend I hadn't found joy in teaching again. Pretend Brooke's kiss hadn't changed something fundamental inside me. At 3 a.m, I made my choice. I typed a careful email to Dr. Peterson, requesting an extension of my sabbatical. Then I wrote another to the teaching program director, outlining plans for expanded environmental curriculum. But I didn't call Brooke. Some bridges, once you burn them, can't be rebuilt with good intentions. The next morning brought fresh hell. Someone had leaked our personal relationship to a larger news outlet, complete with grainy photos of us kissing on my porch. The photos were everywhere by Monday morning. Grainy surveillance-style shots of Brooke and me kissing on my porch, taken with a telephoto lens from the road. The headlines grew more lurid with each publication. Lesbian activists indoctrinate rural children. University professor's secret affair exposed. My hands shook as I scrolled through the coverage on my phone. Someone had been watching us, documenting our private moments for public consumption. The school program director called before 8 a.m. Anna, I'm sorry. The board met in emergency session last night. We have to suspend your teaching position pending investigation. Investigation into what? Teaching botany? You know what this is about. Parents are pulling their children from the program. Panic clawed at my throat. What about my students? They're in the middle of their environmental project. Someone else will complete the curriculum. I drove to the school anyway, hoping to collect my materials and say goodbye. Half the children were missing, but Maria ran to hug my legs when I entered the classroom. Miss Anna, are you really leaving? Tommy looked up from his notebook where he'd been sketching plant cell structures. My dad says you're in trouble for kissing a girl. The innocence in his voice broke something inside me. Sometimes adults make simple things complicated, Tommy. But kissing is good, right? My mom and dad kiss all the time. I knelt to his level. Yes, kissing people you care about is good. Don't let anyone tell you different. Brooke appeared in the doorway, her face grim. We need to talk. She'd been fielding calls from her Marine Foundation all morning. Major donors were threatening to pull funding if she didn't distance herself from the controversy. They want me to transfer to the Alaska office, she said once we were alone in my cabin. Corporate suggestion, of course. For the good of the organization. Alaska's 3,000 miles away. Exactly. We sat on my couch, the space between us feeling vast despite our proximity. Everything we'd built over the past month was crumbling around us. Maybe it's for the best, I said quietly. This media attention will die down once we're not together. Her laugh was bitter. You really think that solves anything? That hiding makes the hatred go away? I think it makes our lives easier. Whose life, Anna? Because mine sure as hell isn't easier pretending I don't care about you. The argument that followed was brutal and necessary. All our fears and frustrations poured out, in harsh words neither of us meant but both needed to say. When she accused me of cowardice, I threw her nomadic lifestyle back at her. When I questioned her commitment to anything lasting, she called me a fraud hiding behind academic respectability. You know what your problem is? She said, pacing my small living room. You're so afraid of being hurt again, that you won't fight for anything worth having. And you're so afraid of staying still, that you sabotage anything good before it can disappoint you. We stared at each other, breathing hard, both recognizing the truth in our accusations. Then something shifted. The anger transformed into desperate need, months of tension demanding release. When she kissed me this time, it wasn't gentle or questioning. It was fierce and claiming, all our suppressed emotions channeled into desperate contact. I pulled her toward my bedroom, past caring about consequences or caution. We needed this connection, this affirmation that what we'd built was real, despite the world trying to tear it apart. Later, wrapped in rumpled sheets with rain drumming against my windows, we lay in charged silence. Her head rested on my chest. Brown hair spilled across my collarbone like silk. The storm outside matched the tumult in my heart, destructive and cleansing simultaneously. "I don't want to go to Alaska," she murmured against my skin. "I don't want you to go, either." Her fingers traced lazy patterns on my shoulder. "Then we fight this. Together." "How?" "My career's destroyed. Your foundation's pressuring you to leave. The teaching program's suspended. We start over. Create something new." I wanted to believe her fierce optimism, but reality felt crushing. With what resources? What credibility? With the truth. With the kids who learned more in 1 month than they had in years. With proof that education isn't about politics, it's about opening minds. She lifted her head to meet my eyes. "Unless you've already decided this isn't worth fighting for." The question hung between us like a challenge. In her brown eyes, I saw reflected possibilities I'd been too scared to acknowledge. Not just us, but what we could build together if we stopped running from difficulty. "The media will crucify us. Let them try." Her smile was sharp and determined. "I fought oil companies and corrupt politicians. A few small-minded bullies don't scare me. And if we lose everything, then we'll have lost it fighting for something that matters." She kissed me again, softer this time but no less intense. Outside, thunder rolled across the Texas plains, the storm finally breaking with cleansing force. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something other than fear. Something that might have been hope, or determination, or simply the refusal to let ignorance win. "Okay," I whispered against her lips, "let's fight." The first sign of hope came from an unexpected source. I was packing boxes in my empty classroom when Mrs. Rodriguez, Maria's grandmother, appeared in the doorway carrying a casserole dish and wearing a determined expression. "Miss Anna, you need to come to tonight's town meeting. I think I've caused enough trouble for everyone." "Trouble?" Her weathered face creased into a frown. "My granddaughter hasn't stopped talking about photosynthesis in 3 weeks. She drew me a diagram of how plants breathe. You call that trouble?" Before I could respond, more families arrived. Tommy's mother, Sarah's father, even the quiet Henderson family who rarely spoke to outsiders. They filled my small classroom, murmuring among themselves in Spanish and English. "We heard about the school board meeting," said Mr. Torres, clearing his throat awkwardly, "about them canceling your program. They had concerns about my teaching methods." "What concerns?" Mrs. Rodriguez's voice sharpened. "That you made learning fun? That my Maria finally likes school?" The room buzzed with agreement. These families had watched their children transform over the past month. Seen curiosity replace boredom, excitement replace resignation. "Where's Miss Brooke?" asked Maria, tugging at my shirt. "Will she come back too?" The innocent question silenced the adults. They'd all seen the news coverage, the speculation about our relationship. But these weren't the anonymous internet commenters or distant media voices. These were people who'd watched us teach their children, who'd seen the results firsthand. "Miss Brooke might have to go away for work," I said carefully. "That's stupid," Tommy declared. "She makes the ocean sound cool." That evening, I sat in the back of the community center as parents, grandparents, and even some teenagers filled folding chairs. The school board had called the meeting to address community concerns about the teaching program. Board Chairman Mr. Phillips opened with prepared remarks about maintaining appropriate educational standards and avoiding controversial content. The implication was clear: my teaching partnership with Brooke had crossed lines they weren't comfortable with. Then Mrs. Rodriguez stood up. "I want to know what's controversial about my granddaughter learning how plants clean water. You going to explain that to me?" Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Other hands went up. "My son's been reading science books for fun," added Mr. Torres. "First time he's ever done homework without being asked. What's the problem there?" "The issue," Phillips responded stiffly, "isn't the subject matter, it's the methods. The messaging." "What messaging?" Mrs. Rodriguez wasn't backing down. "That the earth is connected? That we should take care of it?" The questions kept coming. Parents demanded specifics about what exactly was objectionable in our curriculum. When Phillips couldn't provide clear answers beyond vague concerns about political influences, the mood shifted. Then Brooke walked in. She'd been in Dallas meeting with lawyers and her foundation board, fighting to keep her position. Her arrival silenced the room, every eye tracking her movement to the front. "Mr. Phillips," she said, her voice carrying clearly. "I understand there are concerns about my qualifications to teach in your community. Miss Davis, this isn't really about qualifications." "Good. Because I have a PhD in marine biology from Scripps Institution, 15 years of field research experience, and publications in every major oceanographic journal." She pulled out a folder. "Here's my curriculum vitae. What specific concerns do you have about my credentials?" The challenge hung in the air. Phillips shuffled papers nervously. "The concern is about appropriate boundaries, about outside influences affecting our children." "You mean about two women working together?" Gasps echoed through the room. Nobody had stated it so directly. "Miss Davis?" "No, let's be honest. Dr. Sanders and I taught basic science. We showed children how ecosystems connect land to sea. The only thing controversial about our methods is that we're both women, and some people can't handle that." Mrs. Rodriguez stood again. "I can handle it just fine. My granddaughter learned more in 1 month than she learned all last year." "You want to fire the best teachers she's ever had because you don't like who they kiss? That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard." The room erupted in discussion. Families turned to each other, arguing in multiple languages. Some nodded agreement with Mrs. Rodriguez. Others looked uncomfortable with the directness. "Order," Phillips called, banging his gavel. "Please, order." But something had shifted. The conversation was no longer about vague concerns or political correctness. It was about results, about children's education, about what really mattered. Tommy's mother stood next. "My son wants to be a scientist now. He's been asking me about college. Before Miss Anna's class, he barely spoke in school." "You going to take that away from him?" More voices joined in. Sarah's father talked about his daughter's improved grades. The Henderson boy, usually silent, had started asking questions about everything. Even the teenagers weighed in, defending teachers who'd made learning exciting instead of boring. When the formal vote came, it wasn't even close. The community voted to continue the educational partnership, with expanded environmental curriculum for the following term. Phillips and 2 other board members voted against it, but they were outnumbered by parents who'd seen transformation in their children. As families filed out, many stopped to shake our hands or offer quiet words of support. Not everyone was comfortable with our relationship, but they separated personal feelings from educational value. "Thank you," I told Mrs. Rodriguez as she gathered her purse. "Don't thank me. Thank yourself for caring about my granddaughter." She paused at the door. "And Miss Anna? That woman of yours, she's got fire. Don't let her go." Later that evening, Brooke and I walked the familiar dirt road behind my cabin, hands finally linked without fear of hidden cameras. "Your foundation board?" I asked. "Agreed to let me stay, with conditions. No more media interviews for 6 months, and my next research project has to be purely scientific, no community outreach components." "Those are significant restrictions." "Worth it, though." She squeezed my fingers. "For this, for you, for those kids who defended us tonight." The Texas sky stretched endlessly above us, stars beginning to emerge as daylight faded. For the first time in weeks, I felt something like peace. "Maria asked me today if we were going to get married," Brooke said with a laugh. "What did you tell her?" "That we're taking things one day at a time." She stopped walking, turning to face me in the gathering darkness. "But Anna, I want you to know something. Whatever comes next, whatever other battles we have to fight, I'm not going anywhere unless you ask me to leave." I kissed her under the emerging stars, tasting promises and possibilities on her lips. The final weeks of the teaching program passed in a blur of excited discovery. With community support firmly behind us, Brooke and I threw ourselves into creating something unprecedented. An integrated curriculum that showed children how every system connected to every other system. "Watch this," Tommy said, holding up his science journal during our last week. The pages overflowed with drawings of root systems linked to watershed diagrams, plant cells, connected to ocean food webs, local wildlife interactions mapped with careful precision. "It's beautiful," I told him, meaning it. These children had grasped ecological concepts that challenged graduate students. "Miss Brooke, Will you really keep coming to teach us after Miss Anna goes back to the university? Maria asked during lunch break. Brooke glanced at me across the classroom. We hadn't discussed what happened next. Both of us focused on completing this program successfully. That depends on several things, sweetheart. Like what? Like whether Miss Anna wants me to stay. The question hung between us for the rest of the day. That evening, as we prepared materials for the student presentation ceremony, Brooke finally addressed what we'd both been avoiding. I got an offer today, she said, organizing underwater photographs on my kitchen table. Documentary filmmaker wants to feature our teaching partnership. Full creative control, chance to show what we've actually accomplished here. My hands stilled on the student portfolios I was reviewing. That's incredible. National exposure for your work. For our work. She wants both of us involved, full interviews about the integrated approach we developed. The opportunity was huge. Recognition for innovative educational methods, vindication after weeks of media criticism, proof that our partnership created something valuable. There's just one condition, Brooke continued quietly. The documentary films here, in this community, with these families, it's not possible if you return to the university. The choice crystallized in that moment. Return to academic safety, rebuild my research career on familiar ground, or leap into unknown territory with the woman who'd changed everything about how I saw teaching. I've been offered a research position at the Dallas Environmental Institute, I said. Independent funding, chance to study indigenous plant restoration. It's not university-level prestige, but the work matters. Her eyes lit up. You'd stay in Texas? I'd stay near you. She moved around the table, her hands framing my face with gentle certainty. Are you sure? This isn't the career path you planned. Plans change, sometimes for the better. When she kissed me this time, it felt like sealing a pact with the future. No more running from difficulty, no more choosing safety over passion. The student presentation ceremony transformed the community center into a buzzing exhibition hall. 12 children proudly displayed projects that demonstrated sophisticated understanding of environmental connections. Parents and grandparents moved between stations, asking questions that revealed how much the children had taught them at home. This is how farms affect the ocean, Sarah explained to the mayor, pointing to her watershed model. When we use too much fertilizer, it goes down the creek and makes dead zones where fish can't live. Mayor Jenkins nodded seriously. What should farmers do instead? Rotate crops, plant cover crops to hold the soil. Miss Anna taught us about plants that fix nitrogen naturally. The pride in her voice made my chest tight with emotion. These children had become ambassadors for complex scientific concepts, explaining them with clarity that eluded many adults. Dr. Sanders? A woman approached with professional bearing and an expensive camera. I'm the documentary filmmaker. This is remarkable work. She'd been filming quietly all evening, capturing natural interactions between students and community members. The footage would show genuine excitement for learning, families engaging with science through their children's enthusiasm. The children are extraordinary, I said. They make the teaching easy. It's not just the children, it's how you and Miss Davis work together. You've created something unique here. Later that evening, after families had gone home and equipment was packed away, Brooke and I found ourselves alone in the empty community center. Folding chairs stacked around us, we sat on the small stage where students had presented their work. No regrets? She asked, echoing her question from weeks ago. Only that we fought so hard against this at the beginning. She laughed, pulling me closer on the worn wooden platform. Maybe we needed the fight, made us sure about what we wanted. And what do we want? This, us. The work we do together. Her brown eyes were serious in the dim lighting. A future where we don't have to choose between love and purpose. The kiss that followed felt different somehow. Not desperate like during the media crisis, not questioning like those first tentative explorations. This kiss tasted like certainty, like promises we were finally ready to make. We made love that night in my cabin with unhurried intensity, taking time to memorize each other's responses, to celebrate survival of external storms and internal fears. Her skin was warm silk under my hands, her breath catching when I traced patterns along her spine. When she whispered my name against my throat, it sounded like coming home. Afterward, we lay tangled in sheets and moonlight, planning our shared future with the practical romanticism of people who'd tested their partnership under pressure. The documentary will give us platform to develop more programs, she said, fingers playing with my hair. Other communities might want integrated environmental education. Think we can handle being traveling teachers, living out of suitcases and hotel rooms? As long as we're traveling together. I kissed her shoulder, tasting salt and promise. Together sounds perfect. Outside, night sounds of rural Texas provided gentle soundtrack. Crickets, distant coyotes, wind through mesquite trees. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new chances to prove that love and work could strengthen each other instead of competing. But tonight, we had earned this peace. 6 months later, I stood in our shared apartment in Dallas, surrounded by boxes and the organized chaos of 2 lives successfully merged. Brooke emerged from the kitchen carrying coffee and wearing my old university sweatshirt, her hair still messed from sleep. "Mail's here," she said, handing me a thick envelope postmarked from our former students. "Maria's been busy." Inside, 12 handwritten letters and a class photo from the new science teacher continuing our program. The children had grown taller, their faces more confident, but their enthusiasm remained infectious. "Dear Miss Anna and Miss Brooke," Maria's letter began in careful cursive. "We made a garden at school using everything you taught us. The butterflies love it, and Tommy says the bees make better honey now. When are you coming back to visit?" The documentary had premiered 3 weeks ago, sparking interest from educational foundations across the country. Our phones hadn't stopped ringing with requests for consultation, program development, speaking engagements. What started as local controversy had become a model for innovative environmental education. "Vermont wants us for their summer institute," Brooke said, scrolling through emails. "Full curriculum development, teacher training workshops. And the Oregon School District approved funding for the pilot program." We'd become accidental pioneers, proving that interdisciplinary teaching could work when partners trusted each other completely. The media attention now focused on results rather than sensationalism, highlighting test scores and student engagement metrics that spoke louder than prejudice. My research position at the Dallas Environmental Institute had exceeded expectations, working with native plant restoration while maintaining our educational partnerships satisfied both intellectual curiosity and social purpose. Brooks Marine Foundation had not only renewed her contract, but promoted her to head of community outreach. "Dr. Sanders?" The mail brought another surprise, a formal letter from my former university. "We'd like to discuss your potential return to academic research. Your recent work has garnered significant attention in environmental education circles." I handed the letter to Brooke, who read it with raised eyebrows. "They want you back?" "Looks like it. Full professor track, research funding, even mention of establishing a new interdisciplinary program." "Wow. That's everything you wanted before." "Before, yes. Now?" I shrugged. "Now I want something different." She kissed my cheek, tasting like coffee and possibility. "What do you want now?" "This, us. Work that matters to real people instead of just impressing other academics." The apartment we'd chosen together reflected our merged priorities: space for her underwater photography, room for my plant specimens, a shared office where we developed curriculum materials late into the night. Living together had been surprisingly easy once we stopped fighting the inevitable. "Speaking of us," Brooke said, suddenly nervous, "I have something for you." She disappeared into our bedroom, returning with a small wrapped package that made my pulse quicken. "It's not what you think," she said quickly. "Well, maybe it is. I don't know, just open it." Inside the box lay not a ring, but a key attached to a tag shaped like a tiny plant. "It's to the greenhouse space I rented downtown. For your research. For our next project." Her words tumbled together. I thought maybe we could create a teaching laboratory, somewhere students could see plants and marine ecosystems side by side. The key was warm in my palm, weighted with significance beyond its physical form. "Brooke, this is incredible. But the cost..." "Documentary sales covered it. Plus, I figured if we're building a future together, we should build something permanent, something that belongs to both of us." I kissed her then, pouring months of gratitude and love into the contact. She tasted like home, like adventure, like every good choice I'd been too scared to make before meeting her. "Is this your way of asking me to move in permanently?" I asked against her lips. "Is this your way of saying yes? Yes to the greenhouse. Yes to building something together. Yes to whatever comes next." Her smile could have powered the city, even if what comes next is completely unpredictable, especially then. That afternoon, we drove out to visit our former students for the graduation ceremony. The community center was packed with families, the same faces that had supported us during the crisis now beaming with pride as their children received recognition for academic achievement. "Miss Anna, Miss Brooke." Maria launched herself at us, now taller and wearing a science fair medal. "Look what we won." The regional science competition had awarded first place to their watershed restoration project. The same concepts we'd taught evolved into sophisticated environmental analysis. "We're going to state finals," Tommy announced proudly. "Want to come watch us win?" "Wouldn't miss it," Brooke promised. During the ceremony, I watched these children who'd started our journey demonstrate confidence and curiosity that would serve them throughout their lives. They'd learned more than botany and marine biology. They'd learned that knowledge connected everything, that questions led to discoveries, that learning never stopped. Mrs. Rodriguez found us afterward, her weathered face creased with satisfaction. "You did good work here," she said simply. "Changed these kids forever." "They changed us too," I replied honestly. "That's how teaching works, when it's done right." As sunset painted the Texas sky in familiar shades of orange and pink, Brooke and I walked the dirt road behind my former cabin one last time. The new teacher lived there now, continuing work we'd started, building on foundations we'd established. "Any regrets?" she asked, our traditional question carrying new weight. "Only one." Her eyebrows rose in question. "I regret how long it took me to realize that love doesn't compete with purpose, it amplifies it." She stopped walking, pulling me into her arms under the emerging stars. "I love you, Anna Sanders. Everything about you. Your brilliant mind, your stubborn heart, your terrible coffee. I love you too, Brooke Davis. Your fierce passion, your gentle hands, your ability to see magic in scientific truth." We kissed under the vast Texas sky, surrounded by night sounds and infinite possibilities. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new students, new opportunities to prove that education and love could change the world one mind at a time. But tonight was ours, perfect and complete. The ending that was really just the beginning of everything we'd build together. In the distance, a mockingbird ran through its repertoire of borrowed songs, creating something new from pieces of everything it had heard before. Just like us.